On today's show, we're covering it all from politics to military to education, all with our special guest, Councillor Shaun Kranenborg. This is Penhold Talk Radio. And welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us again this week. My name is Brian Constantine, and unfortunately, I am not joined by my co-host, Michael Rowland, this week. He is unfortunately a little under the weather. But don't turn it off yet. You won't have to listen to me drone on for the next hour or so, because I am joined this week by Councillor Shaun Kranenborg.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for giving up some of your time this evening to come out to this little show and open up a little bit to us, to the town. Let us get to know you, and who knows what kind of conversations will happen as we get going. All right. So as we've kind of set the pattern now with the other councillors, like just kind of get to know Shaun Kranenborg, the person, and then we'll get to know your ideas. So it's my understanding that you, or at least your family, have been in this area for a while now.
Yeah, my mom and dad were actually by the old Reservoir Hill, and that's where I grew up, and they were the second house on that side of the highway to be built. So yeah, they were built in a farmer's field. They actually built their house in the wrong spot because there was nothing around it, and it got torn down, and they had to rebuild. So yeah, we've been here a long time. I've been here all my life except for a brief stint in Red Deer going to school.
So who's been here longer than you, or Yarjo, Mayor Yarjo?
I think me.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
positive, but I think so.
I thought Yarjo was clearly the winner, but yeah, you give him a run for the money.
It's close.
For
it's
that.
Close.
I'm surprised. All the councillors so far have been here over 15 years. I think most of them have been, even though they haven't all been on the show yet. But I think almost all of them have been here for a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not new residents, and so you grew up in Penhold then, and what was home life? So how many siblings and troublemakers you had to grow up with?
Yeah, so I was the youngest. My mom and dad had two boys, Mark and Scott. They both live in Penhold still. So we all grew up in the same house. Scott has lived a little bit in Springbrook and then back, and then Mark's lived all over the place, and he's back. So my childhood was awesome. It was the town where you come on when the lights turn on, right?
Yeah.
And so Toboggan Hill is right across from my dad's tree, and we always used to have friends go through the alley and cut over the tree, and he used to get upset. So yeah, so just I grew up looking right at that farmer's field that used to be the farmer's field where Councillor Mueller actually lives.
Oh, okay.
Right across the street, and we used to walk through the field, and there was hay bales in the field right in the middle of town. So it was like living in a farm field. I remember waking up, and I think Mayor Yarjo talked about it too, and there's like combines and stuff going right outside my window. So
yeah,
pretty phenomenal upbringing, country upbringing, and until the town started to build up. So
yeah,
fairly recently. So
yeah, that's the thing. You don't have to have been living here long to get a sense of how much things have changed.
No.
Yeah, we moved. I moved to Penhold here with my wife in 2008, and one reason, one of it is just it was more affordable than Red Deer at the time. But we got a nice spot on the east side of town. So our place, our kitchen window looks out towards the field across Waskesiu Ave now.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we still kind of have that little bit of that country feel there, instead of just having neighbors all surrounding you.
Yeah.
But so it's similar. I feel like I can connect a little bit with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm not looking directly across into someone else's home, but yeah, there's still farmland out there.
Yeah, we built on Newton, so my wife and I, when we look out the bedroom window, it's you can still see the mountains because it's right on the edge. So
nice.
Still kind of feels like country. So
yeah.
I don't know how long it's gonna last.
I know, that's right. I'm So yeah, the town annexed a large part of land, and it stretches down past where I live on Dundee. I'm hoping it's too much of a floodplain though, for too much quick development there.
There's a pretty big gap there. That's a floodplain. Yeah. It would be probably a fairly big avenue of green space going through there. I think.
That's what I'm crossing my fingers for.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So two siblings, lowest on the pecking order as it
Yeah.
goes. So now you on your bio on the town site, it lists two occupations. First, we have a teacher. What do you teach?
I teach right now. I teach at North Cottage High School in Red Deer. So it's
Which
part of
sorry,
our,
what school is it?
North Cottage.
North Cottage.
It's actually it's in Lower Fairview.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if it's still called Lower Fairview.
Riverside
Meadows.
Yeah, Riverside Meadows. Yeah.
And it's the oldest continuing operating school in Alberta, and I think possibly Western Canada. I'm not sure on that.
Is that down by Koinonia?
Yeah, right beside
okay.
Koinonia. It's actually on Koinonia's
It's that building around the
Yeah.
corner. Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
even
so it's
know
built
these.
in 1912.
Yeah.
It's been operating continuously as far as I know. So
See, I never knew it was still used as a school. And
Yeah.
even still has its name.
My mom and dad,
Has
or
a
my
name.
mom went there in kindergarten back in the day. So
That's crazy.
yeah, it's old.
Yeah, no, I always just thought of it as like a heritage site.
Yeah,
more
no,
than
it's
anything else.
an operating school. Yeah, so we're part of alternative programs. So we run a specialized program to get kids done high school. We have kids grade 9 through 12 there. Some just wrapping up courses. Some take their whole high school career there. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty special place. Yeah.
So do you teach a wide range of subjects then to help the students out, or
Yeah.
are you more
So I
specialized?
facilitate like everything math and science across the board from 9 to 12. But then we actually have teachers online that teach specifically mark this stuff, teach the kids, do little lessons with them. And I just help kind of when they need help. And then I specifically have my own workload that's online of courses that I teach. And some of my kids are in-house. And then I also teach kids at Thurber, Hunting Hills, Gateway Christian. So yeah, all online.
Yeah, it sounds like a interesting collection of. It's certainly not like when someone says they're a teacher.
Yeah.
You have your classroom,
Yeah.
and you have your rotating
Yeah.
collection of kids that come through every year. You sound like you got a lot of variety in what you end up teaching.
Yeah, that was me for the longest time. I taught at Gateway Christian School when I started my career. Loved it, and then just wanted a little bit of more experience with some of the administrative stuff. So I have an awesome administrator, Stephen Pottage, who is with Alternative Schools, and he runs an umbrella of schools. And so I'm at North Cottage. So it's myself and my partner teacher, and then my EA with all the kids. So I get a lot of independence there, a lot of chance to do kind of my own thing. So yeah, I love it. It's great learning opportunity for leadership. So
Yeah. And then the other role is listed as a military police member. So it's not just military that you're part of. You're an MP, or in a different MP version, but military police. Now, when I think of when I think of the police, obviously you think about the patrolling vehicle of the RCMP or something like that. And obviously, I'm assuming you don't kind of cruise around bases in that capacity.
not in that capacity.
Yeah. And then the other element that comes to mind is that this military police almost comes to mind is kind of old cop shows where you have the internal affairs guys, and they're always the bad guys, because they seem like they're always against the policemen.
Yeah.
Always trying to root out or looking suspiciously at the guys who are just trying to catch the bad guys, and then the internal affairs are just kind of messing things up. Yeah. So what is any of that related to military police, or hopefully you have better working relationship? But what is your role as military police then?
We do. So in Canada, we have a different way of doing things. Everybody's a soldier first. So our dentists are trained soldiers. Our doctors are soldiers. Everybody goes through basic, and everybody becomes, we have what's called, depending on Navy, Army, Air Force, you go through a phase for your element training, we call it. So I did my Army training. And then so I was qualified as a soldier, and then I qualify as a trade. So I want to be an MP. I was an artillery officer first, and then actually willingly took a demotion to start off at the bottom to be an MP, because there was a spot, but not with my rank. So I gave up my rank, and then started from the bottom. So I'm a reservist. So our Reg Force MPs do patrolling, just like the RCMP. They work on bases like CFB Edmonton.
Yeah.
And then there's field platoons too. You can get posted to a field platoon, which is like you do detainee handling, things like that. And so that's what reservists do. They basically do the Army side of the policing. So while we train to do the patrol stuff, I've trained for all that, like arrest techniques, investigative stuff on a basic level. We do, like in Afghanistan, we would do base security, Air Force, base security.
Yeah.
Yeah. Postings, things like that. And basically make sure that it's called force protection. So basically I did Oplentis, which is the Canadian Forces response to civil issues, basically like disaster response. And so I did with the forest fires in Vernon. And so our job was to guard the base while the soldiers were on base so that they can do their job and nobody comes on base and bothers them. So, yeah.
Okay. So when say a combatant is captured on the battlefield and brought back to base, that's where you would be.
That's our specialty. Yeah. So we're specialized in things like knowing the ins and outs of the Geneva Convention and things of that nature, and knowing,
which is very interesting this time, right around that side. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, that would be our thing. Would be basically in theater would be security, also criminal stuff if there's Reg Force guys with us, because if soldiers commit crime.
Because that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so on base,
policing, military, but yeah, you're looking at criminal activity whenever it comes in our interaction within a military setting. Right.
Yeah. So my main job as a reservist would be more of like the security side of things, the force protection, things like that, making sure everybody's safe, securing the base, those kinds of things. And then we'd have a separate branch, usually Reg Force guys, that would do criminal investigations. Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome.
So as a reservist, then how many hours do you have to put in on that?
All told, I've done about 6 months of training away from my family. Yeah. And then now it's like Wednesday nights you parade, but then I do go for postings, like Oplentis when I was in Vernon for 2 weeks. You can go to Poland. There's options available to you to do those kinds of things. So yeah. So now that I'm done all my training, there's a minimal requirement to keep what we call NES, so from not basically going off the books and not being effective anymore. So
yeah, so kind of keep your accreditation active kind of idea. Yeah. So as a reservist, as an MP, is there any thought about what's going on over in Russia and Ukraine? Is that something that is seriously on your mind, or is that a possibility?
It is. The whole reason I joined the military is because my dad was born in the Netherlands after the war. But his family came to Canada because they were liberated by the Canadians. So that's the reason I joined the military. So to see a country, any country, overrun, and to see those kinds of things and see what my family would have gone through, it's very hard to sit back. Now, Ukraine, as you know, isn't a member of NATO, so we do have very firm rules on how we're going to operate, right? Yeah. So in official capacity as a Canadian soldier, no, we're not going to go to Ukraine. We are in Poland. We are in the other countries. We're beefing up those, and I would be willing to do that. I don't know what's going to happen. That NATO thing's a big deal, and stepping over that line would be, if he steps over the border, it would be not good. So so.
But yeah, even now, like there is some little bit of a ramp up. I think there's some soldiers that have been moved out to Poland at this point, and then there seems to be at least 3,400 on kind of alert, I guess it would be, to move into that area whenever NATO would call.
We always have Reg Force. So the Reg Force guys, the full-time soldiers, they're always training. So everyone wonders what they do because there's not always wars or peacekeeping missions, and we have about 100,000, right?
Yes.
Total. So we have one group of soldiers that's always in what's called basically a quick reaction format, and they're ready to roll pretty much at any time. So they kind of rotate so that you're in high readiness. Yeah. So those would probably be your readiness troops that are ready to roll. And then there would be, of course, more should we need it. Yeah. Yeah. But as far as the NATO treaty stand, basically like an attack on Poland would be like an attack on us, right?
Yeah.
So it's all or nothing. Yeah. Or the NATO countries specifically, all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Any NATO triggers that's a red line that everyone is kind of watching and tiptoeing around. Yeah. How much can these European countries help out Ukraine without crossing that red line?
And we don't even know what it really looks like, because Poland offered to donate fighter jets.
Yes.
But the Americans said no, because they were going to fly in from Ramstein, and that's a NATO base or an American base. And so would that be an attack by NATO? Yeah. Against the Russians, and nobody knows what that looks like, so they're playing it safe, right? Yeah,
there's just so much up in the air right now regarding that. I can't imagine I can't imagine being in command at this point. To just seeing like trying to figure out just the ins and outs of politics, the fog of war. Like even now, it is one thing to fight wars. 100 years ago, trying to figure out where all your guys were at any given time. It just is, at least from the civilian point, it just seems like chaos over there as well.
Right.
It doesn't, like, the fog of war still seems like a real thing even today, trying to figure out the logistics and where everything is and how everything moves.
Yeah, I heard in the news that there's so many Canadians that are there, private citizens, that they actually have what's called a Canadian brigade.
I don't
know how many of those people. I know, like legally, if I were to resign from the army and be done, there's nothing stopping us as Canadians to go over there.
Yeah.
Our government has said that that's the case. So you could.
You can go over there at least for Ukraine.
As a
if
private,
you fight for Russia, that's probably not
exactly. As a private citizen, you could do it. I know one of the top snipers in the world is a Canadian, and he is now retired, and he's over or going over right away. So
yeah, I saw those headlines starting to come out about him. Now I was going to save this for a little bit later, but let's push in on that a little bit. Yeah, so as you mentioned, there's Ukraine basically put the call out to say anyone who wants to come fight, we'll take you. Now, apparently, when you get there, in order to kind of get the protection of Ukrainian legal defense, all that kind of goes along with that, not just so you not have a ragtag group going out there. You have to sign a 3-year contract, I think, is what I've been reading. And so you're talking about his nickname is Wally, apparently. So this is from a CBC article that he just crossed over into Ukraine and was starting to engage there. And it talks about him being greeted with hugs and handshakes and flags from the Ukrainians. Now, so I guess initially, do you feel that pull to want to get involved in that? Is that kind of a universal? If you're you're in the military, you want to get in the action. Is that so? When you hear a whole bunch of veterans, I guess would probably be this right word. Lots of veterans going over there. Does that surprise you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Right. The reason you see retired people going is because they're not bound by the rules anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
Ukraine's doing it really well with the Foreign Legion thing that they've set up. If you see on the news, they have a lot of people have the yellow bands, right? They don't have time to arm everybody and put on the uniform of Ukraine or anything like that. So what they're doing is they're identifying themselves to the conventions of the Geneva Conventions so that they can be protected by the treaties. So that's kind of why they're doing it all by the book. But I think veterans have that pull for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Reg Force guys, for sure, it's all they know. Oftentimes they retire and they go into bouts of depression or they have a hard time going into civilian life.
Yeah.
I won't because I'm a civilian too. So yeah, I can definitely see that. If minus taking away the family life and the responsibilities that I have here and the obligation to obviously work with the Canadian Forces, I would have that pull for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's another guy that's talked about, or maybe it is Wally. So in this article, it says that the journey from life as a civilian computer programmer with a young family in Canada to the danger and uncertainty of the biggest war Europe has seen in 7 decades has been nothing short of mind-bending, Wally said. And then, quote, "A week ago I was still programming stuff," he said, "and I'm grabbing anti-tank missiles in a warehouse to kill real people. That's my reality right now." And then this is the thing that shocks me, not having that kind of military experience. But he says Wally will miss his son's first birthday this week. He called it the hardest part of the decision to join the fight in Ukraine. His wife was opposed to the idea. He said, "You can imagine what she said and how she thinks." So yeah, how that to me is hard to understand. That someone would make that sacrifice. Right. To go fight over there. So it's not surprising, but like, I guess you understand that perhaps a little bit more than the citizen, because I think the average Joe sees that and just says that's crazy.
Right. I definitely wouldn't count myself like as understanding it as much as combat veterans, right? I've never been in combat.
Sure.
So, but they would understand a lot more than me.
Yeah, yeah.
We say Canadian veterans or anybody who's basically passed basic training, and I've passed all my training. So just having the military lifestyle and knowing what that's like. But the main draw for me would be like knowing that there was no one there when the Germans marched into Holland right off the bat, and just thinking like that's happening in the Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
So just knowing that had the Canadian farm boys not signed up for King and Country and gone to war, I wouldn't be here necessarily, right?
Yeah.
My dad was born in Iverdale, so he was right on the German border. So the V2 rockets launched to England were launched right from there. And after the war, I think one of the leaders of the Reich after Hitler was dead, actually hid in the Christian school, the Reformed school in Iverdale, right around there. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I would say I think that's where the Reich ended officially. Cause so it's that draw. Like I can see why you'd miss your kid's birthday because there's kids that won't get birthdays.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. So I guess they, especially someone who's been in combat, they know they have such a strong sense of duty and the need to act in that situation.
yeah, it's hard to explain.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
Like you do make an oath to the Queen, and we were talking about this before the show. And you can make an affirmation or an oath. I believe they're called. One's on the Bible and one's just on. I think the Canadian Constitution. I'm not sure. I did the Bible. When you do that, you see it in the movies and it's kind of cheesy, but I actually teared up when I did mine because there's the flags in the background and it's an officer there, and I was in a suit and tie, and I was a nobody and ready to roll, and everybody's watching you, and it hits you pretty hard what you're signing up for, what you could be signing up for, right?
So when does that swearing in happen? Is that like right before? Is that before basic training and everything, or is that afterwards?
Yeah. So you start the second you're hired and you're basically given the job. You go for a job interview, do panels, physicals, mental exams, psychiatric exams for certain jobs. Basically, what they do is they give you a score across the board. They give you a number on your vision, your ability to do weird tests, your physicality, your medical, and then you qualify for certain jobs. Like I couldn't qualify for a pilot because of my eyes. But like across the board, I'm a test taker type. So I did really good on the test. It doesn't mean I'm intelligent. I just can play that game because I'm a teacher. And so I scored really high on those, but then couldn't because of the eyes, right? So they basically score you, and you can be different things based on what numbers you get.
Sure, yeah.
That's called a basic recruit. And then you go into basic training that everybody across the forces does, right?
Yeah.
So I was in there with people that were going to be dentists and stuff like that. And so then you're called basic trained. And then you go to your trades training, and mine was MP. So yeah. And then once you're qualified in that, you're qualified to go do something.
Yeah. And so where is the swearing in before that basic recruiting?
Yeah. So mine was before I went to basic training.
So that would be like the threshold. That's probably where you start feeling the weight of this decision.
That's where it's pretty late. Yeah. Yeah. You signed on the dotted line.
You better be sure. This is basically your vows, as it were, for a soldier. Right?
I know like Reg Force guys have a contract that they have to spend so much time. We don't per se.
So you can when you sign up, you can say you want to be part of the regular troops or
yeah,
the
you can apply to
reservists.
both. Yeah, so it's like applying for a full-time job or part-time job, and
Gotcha.
right. And so, but when you sign up, like when I signed up, it was a contract in my heart or in my head, right? Like I wasn't gonna do it and do the training and drop and as much as my wife probably wants me to. Yeah, so. Yeah, that's what I did, and that's I think the moment it hits you when you do that, right? I can't imagine what it's like for the guys that are doing it when Afghanistan was on as Red Force guys, because you're going to get sent.
Oh, sure,
right?
yeah.
Like it's in the back. It's not in the back of your mind. You're going to go.
Yeah, it's different than just signing up in peacetime.
Yeah, in peacetime, and then Ukraine happens, so you never know.
Yeah,
but like during a conflict, and ironically, the recruiting just goes through the roof during conflicts, right?
Yeah.
So.
And so you are you the first member of your family to be part of the military? Because you say you were inspired by what happened to your family.
Yeah,
so
my Opa was my grandfather on my mom's side. Way back when they're from what do you call them? Loyalists from America, from the United States. So they came to Canada during the Revolution. And so one of my great-great-grandfathers was Sir William Johnson and Sir John Johnson on my mom's side. So they have a background that is both something to be proud of and something to not be proud of. So back in the day,
I think everyone
back in the day, they did things differently in war for sure. And and that's that family. And then my dad, my Opa, fought in the underground in Holland. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about your folks, it reminds me, I wanted to get to your own family. So according again to your bio, it says you're married, and you've already kind of referred to it. And how many kids was there?
When I married my wife, she had 3 girls,
Yeah.
and so I was dad, which was really, really special to me. My oldest was about 9, and my youngest was 5 when I met them. So it's a different relationship as a step parent, but our family is really close. So it's been a actual really tight knit family all along. 2 of my daughters moved away. My youngest daughter, Layla, is still in the house. And then we adopted our son, Luca. So his biological parents are from Canada, but he's also from Nepal. So
Nepal, eh?
yeah. So
so adoption, eh? So that's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that angle. So what was the thinking going into adoption? Because that's usually something that someone does, perhaps because they've had that experience growing up or something like that. What prompted you to go through the adoption process?
my wife has adopted family members.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think her grandma's adopted, and she's a very special person in her life. Or there's a whole bunch of family that's adopted in that family. So I can't remember exactly who, but we were talking about having a baby together. And she had really, really hard time with the first 3 pregnancies. So her doctor recommended that we don't. And so then we looked into adoption and just made that choice as a family. It was really cool because the girls got to be involved in it. We went to all the counselors together. It's totally different than having a kid.
No kidding.
Naturally, because it's like going for a license test or something. You got to do everything. I wish everybody had to do it. World would be a smoother running place. But so we did that and had to wait on the waiting list for about 2 years. And then Luca came. Yeah. And so our miracle story is we had picked the name Luca for a boy. We didn't have girls' names, so we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And when we were driving there, the social worker said, prepare yourself if she asks you to meet Luca. And we almost hit the ditch because the mom had actually named him Luca in the hospital before she ever met us.
No way.
Yeah, and it has no family background. They chose it out of the blue, so it's crazy.
That's great. And that name, how old is he?
He's 4.
4.
Turning 5 tomorrow.
Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Pixar just came out with the movie Luca.
Yeah.
Was it before then? I guess
It was before then. It was.
So I was just trying to think of
it was
like
a
why
fairly.
that's just
I
unbelievable.
liked it because back in I don't know if you remember the show ER.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
Dr. Luka Kovic, and he was just kind of borderline, just like his attitude was just cocky, and I just liked him. I don't know if I jived with him for some reason.
Yeah.
But he was good, and so I just had that name. I was always like loved that name, but there's an ethnicity to like Croatian or something like that. So it has nothing to do with our family background. I just loved the name, and my wife loved it too. So and she the
crazy.
biological mom picked it out of the blue. So.
That's
So I thought that was
incredible.
pretty cool.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's not just a roll of the dice kind of thing.
No.
Like that's
Because it's not like Ben or James or something.
no,
right?
oh, exactly. That's the other thing. Yeah, it's like I like the name John. Oh, look at this, and here's a John.
Yeah.
Like
less cool story. Yeah.
No, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's stuff like that just. You can't. It's so hard to shake it off as just saying coincidence.
Yeah.
Like there's more going on behind the scenes. It seems.
Yeah.
When that kind of stuff just lines up.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about the odds being just unbelievable to be just pure chance.
Yeah. And then at the time we had a paperwork error. Like literally, it sounds like you're doing business, but it was a paperwork error.
Yeah.
And we had a background check, like you do everything right, and something came back not completed, so we were delayed again. And literally, if that delay didn't happen, we wouldn't have him, right? So you just think like, so frustrating in the moment, like an editing mistake, so frustrating, and then just kind of downtrodden. And then it turns out that delay is perfect, right?
Yeah,
everything works out perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that's a cool story.
Yeah. So he's had like 3 little moms running around with the girls.
So all right, so back to the occupations. We've gone through teacher. We've gone through the military. And then now you are a 2-term town councillor.
Yes.
And as I've asked everyone, in fact, yeah, okay, I'll start here. As I've asked everyone, or all the councillors, why get into public service?
Right.
This, like I said, it's not the most friendly playground to pop up in.
Yeah.
So what prompts you to put yourself out in the public eye like
I remember
that?
one of your early podcasts, people were talking about ego. And I really thought about that, and I said, there's some really good points there. And I said, I don't think that's why, because I really try to I'm not on social media a lot on my council page. I don't do videos for it. It was really hard for me to speak in front of the camera when we did the session, but I'm a teacher, so you know, I can do it. And so I don't like being out there. I don't, even at council meetings, if you listen to them, I listen a ton and talk only when needed. I think people talk too much sometimes. And not just at council meetings, but you don't need to talk if you agree. Right?
No, this podcast probably counts for about 75% of my talking all week.
Yeah. So I'm the same way, right? So and then when I started to think, I said, to a certain extent, you have to have a little bit of an ego, no matter what, because by your very nature, you have to think that you're in a position to help people with some problems. Yeah. Right. By your very nature. So either you're an ego and it's all about you, like some politicians higher up, or you're I have solutions to those problems. And that's to think that you can help people. It has to have a little bit of an ego. Right. Yeah. So, but I tried saying, no, I don't. And so it sounds cheesy, but it was really about public service is huge for me. So, it's always step up or step back kind of thing. So I stepped up as the town that I love. I want to raise my kids here. We did. I hope my grandkids were here. My daughter, Shelby, just had our first grandkid. Nice. So I'm 38. Nice. Wow. So I'm grandpa. So a shout out to my grandson, Hayes, who was born on March 8th. So a couple days ago.
Wow. 2 days. And so this is the first grandkid?
First grandkid.
Wow.
Yeah. Hopefully
That's
first
cool.
one for a while.
It feels a little rushed.
Yeah. Cause we got an almost 5-year-old and then a brand new grandbaby. Yeah. So, and I wasn't planning on it being that quick, but I wanted to set up something that I'd be proud of for future generations.
He's going to have the most active grandparent ever. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. And then, my mom and dad still live here. So all my brothers live here. My brother and his wife live across the road. I could throw a rock at their house. My other brother lives by the multiplex and my parents live on Robinson. So just love the town and want to do something. And I knew Mike Yarjo from being on there. We kind of grew up a little bit together. We weren't friends, but we were acquaintances. So I knew him. I was going to say, how long have you guys known each other?
A long time.
It's not like there's a lot of space for you guys to miss each other.
So grew up knowing each other quite well, and then just basically liked what he stood for. I think it's really important that you are comfortable with the person who's going to be your person that's leading you. We're a very healthy council. It's very good. We can disagree on a lot of things without conflict, and we do. And I like the team that he was leading, and that's why I decided to step up. I was pretty confident in the election that he had something that I wanted to get behind. So I had some ideas of my own and just ran for it, and was honestly shocked that I got in, because I wasn't a campaigner. I didn't know. I was a first-term councillor and was just happy to be there, right? Happy to be at the table, for sure.
Yeah, I'll go around with my little door hangers. This is what you're supposed to do, right? Hang the signs here.
Yeah, so I was lucky. Yeah. So
I don't know if you can chalk this one up to luck, because it was. I didn't look at the stats from the first. So you first elected in 2017,
right?
But then 2021, you were the top vote getter. I think it was somewhere in the 70% of all voters. Selected your name. So what does that mean to you? How do you
I chalk that up to two things, and none of it's me. The first is name recognition. My parents have been here a long time. So there's people that my dad's one of those people that my mom and dad just you leave a place better than when you found it. And I think a lot of people recognize that. I've never really heard someone really say something negative about my parents. Yeah. They're great people. I think that helped me a lot. Kind of like the Kennedy thing, right? Where everybody, including the cousin that can't put a sentence together, is a senator kind of thing. So I think it was a little bit of that. And then second, I waited till after we did the forum, and then I put I did paper to every house. I hit up pretty much every house in Penhold. If I missed someone, it's an accident. I talked to a few people, but it was COVID. I didn't knock on doors. So I only talked to the people that were receptive to it. And then in my paper, I had a link to all the councillors' bios. So I gave them all the information instead of just my own.
Oh, yeah.
And I think people liked that. And then they found councillors that they liked, but then they associated me with that. I made it easy for them.
Yeah, I like that.
They just came out. Yeah. And I also hit, like, I purposely nailed the whole town in 3 days right at the end, right just a day before the early vote. So
nice.
yeah. And so it was the other election as well. So I wasn't annoying, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of it is luck, right? So
yeah. I don't know that coincidence thing. I don't know about that, but no. So yeah, I remember being at the council forum, and we're just getting set up, or the candidate forum for this last round, and I got you. I think you were one of the first to show up, and I asked you to do a little sound check for me.
Yeah.
And I believe you quoted a little bit of Shakespeare, wasn't it?
So, yeah.
I think it was Shakespeare.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how much? And this is just a little bit of a sidetrack from the counselor thing. Where and I think it showed up as well in the forum itself. You seem to be very comfortable, let's say, around the English language. You know how to craft a phrase. It seems like you're very intentional in putting in little memorable hits, a little alliteration here and there. Is that part of the teacher background? Is there something deeper? Is that intentional?
So I love language. Like when I took my master's, the main reason I wanted to be a teacher and to be go for my master's eventually was that the coursework was paper writing. So I love writing papers. I love crafting words and stuff. So cover letters are way more fun than resumes, kind of thing. Yeah. So they're really cheesy. They come off as very, very old British kind of stuff. And I use words, but yeah, not in a sense that I think I'm intelligent with the English language. I like the way it sounds.
Yes.
And I like when people speak well.
Yes.
But I also speak, I'm a teacher, so it's sometimes colloquialisms and things slip out for sure. But yeah, no, I being in front of the camera and the way that happened rather than being live, it was like we are now. It was like a conversation that was very natural.
Yeah.
I knew people were going to watch it, but they weren't watching it right then.
Yes.
So I could be like,
I'd
be like, oh, I can go home and sleep and whatever. I just won't watch it later. But there's no people sitting there watching you, so it was it was fairly
in that
easy.
sense,
Yeah. And some councils, there was a glitch in the system when we did it with the way it was explained a little bit, and some of the thinking on how the councillors were going to do it. And there were councillors that forgot notes because they didn't think that they had time to grab the notes and things like that. So there were people that were less lucky than me, right? So it's a luck of the draw too, and so. I think if people speak well, Councillor Walsh and I are both teachers, so we have, I think, a little bit of an edge at least speaking in front of people all the time.
Yeah, a little bit of that extemporaneous.
Yeah, we can get in front of people. I still get nervous as heck, but we've done it tons of times. So I think people associate that right or wrong. I think some of our higher up politicians in federal politics and provincial politics, not necessarily at the federal level, but have got in where they're at because they can speak well, and that's not always a good thing. They can sell you ketchup, right, to a white gloved person. So.
I guess I don't know if it's the speaking well. I think it would be more charisma of in how they deliver things.
It's like the Kennedys, right? Like they were thought of as
like they're not Churchills. That's like today. There's hardly a Churchill.
There's none.
No. And I'm just speaking. I'm just talking about just the way he could craft a sentence and words, and to inspire someone. There's that kind of speaking, but and I don't know if I don't know. I haven't watched a lot of his a lot of tapes around him, so I don't know how charismatic he was, but you just by reading his words, you get kind of that inspiration, that power that he's trying to communicate. Right. And I don't think that's I don't think that's something you need to be I don't think that some people need to be defensive about the ability to use language properly.
Right.
Yeah, politicians know how to do that.
Right.
Especially as far as the raw ability of language. Yeah, I'm less convinced by their their ability to actually grasp it and use it properly.
Right. The most important thing is that when you leave the venue of saying what you were going to do, you actually do it. That
Yes.
said,
Oh, yeah.
if you can't articulate what you want people to believe you're going to do, you're a lost cause right from the start, probably, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not going to know what you stand for, what you're behind, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what we see a lot with politicians now.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of showmanship.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a repeating theme on this podcast.
Our question period. There's
yeah.
a great chunk of Canadians think question period is real.
Yeah.
And that's where things get settled. It's a farce.
It's
a complete.
Yeah, you're talking about the question period, especially at the federal level. But I think
Yeah.
this applies. I think it applies on the provincial level, but
Yeah.
as well. Just seems farther up you go, the more games are played.
Yeah.
The more the ego and the power comes
Right.
in. Like you said, at any political level, there has to be a sense of ego of that. I have right answers that would help people out. But somewhere along the way, that shifts to kind of more of a selfishness,
Right.
that power, follow me kind of thing,
Right.
instead of let me show you a way, kind of a little more of that servant kind of style leadership.
Yeah.
And so they have question period in the legislature and the parliament, and when you're looking at, or when you're watching that, I can barely stand the little clips that each side puts out.
Yeah.
Because it looks like a show. It's no different. It's a bad movie is what it is. Because all you're seeing is actors playing their lines.
Yeah.
And it's aggravating. It's sad. It's all those all those emotions in between there that I just want a good, honest, real person to say what they think, do what they say, and then let the population choose
Right.
whether or not they want to follow that path.
Right.
Don't. That's the thing. All this showmanship ends up. I think it ends up kind of treating the population as children, as if we can be, as if we're not smart enough to figure out the game that's being played. It's just a little bit of the rant, I guess.
No,
but yeah, no, I think that's even at this level, the ability to speak well, and to back that up in an earnest way, and combining those two, you get an honest politician.
Right.
Even if you disagree with that person, you have far more respect for that person and that politician, and those are just in such short supply now.
Yeah. I also think if you speak well and you put together something that you've thought about, or put together a sentence that's well structured, or a speech that's well structured, and you answer questions. Like, I know some of those questions we knew ahead of time. Those are the ones that I nailed. The other ones we were presented on the fly, and I was making notes the whole time other people were talking, right? Yeah. So I was ready with something. I think at least if you speak well to a point, people know you've thought about it, right? So at least something's in your brain, and they know that you went home and at least rolled it around there a little bit. So
yeah, the nice thing about the more local politics are, there isn't speechwriters behind it.
yeah, it's just us, and you can tell sometimes.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
and yeah, that's perhaps another just element of the whole show that gets played out at the higher levels, because you'll have the prime minister or the premier, but there's like 10 other guys that are putting words on the page or helping them craft those words.
Yeah.
Or at least on the municipal level, it's harder to come off as fake.
Right.
You don't have that huge.
No,
that
and we
huge
disagree all the
combat,
time. But there's no party there's no party politics in council, right?
Yeah.
So we obviously have our leanings, and to say that you don't have a political leaning or you don't have a faith background that's going to affect some of the decisions or the thinking behind your decisions would be silly. But at the end of the day, we always say council says this, council says that, right? I've been disagreeing with things and lost votes before, but when we walk out, if people ask you a question, I say council said this, and that's us. That's me too, even though I didn't say it, right? So and there's a certain unity there that people, I don't know, like at the end of the day, the vote is the vote, and I believe in democracy, and if it goes against what I thought, I honestly think it's the right decision.
I guess I'm more of a confrontationalist or contrarian when it comes to things. So I sometimes watching council meetings they're a little too
Tame?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
me. But
Yeah.
but I definitely respect the ability to of council to engage in kind of collegial manner, and even in disagreeing, not see that as a slight against the person
Yeah.
or something like that. Like you guys can still go out the next day with each
Yeah.
other, even if you voted it in opposite ways.
Right.
And that is hopefully something that can get passed up the line.
Right. And because there's no party and pigeonhole politics, like if you're a conservative, you believe this. Lately we've always had like conservative, you believe this, liberal, you believe this. Well, with council, you can like, I disagree with this counselor today, that counselor tomorrow. I've disagreed with everybody on something, and everybody has,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
But you're not always disagreeing with the same person, and you're not always feeling like you're opposed by that person, right? Sometimes you're surprised when they vote the same way as you. So,
Yes, yeah. There's no colors on the. Yeah, I guess that's a good point there, because what ends up happening at the higher levels is you're not actually, you lose yourself in the colors of your party. And you just become
You toe
the
the party
blue
line.
politician or the orange politician or the red politician.
yeah, you wear the right color tie and you say what you need to say, and it's pigeonholed, right? Like the party platform is like, I lean conservative. People that know me know that's no secret, right?
Yeah.
There are things that I think different governments have done well. And if the liberals were to do something that I like and I saw it, I would be smart enough and in love with my country enough to say, that's a great idea.
Yes.
Let's steal
we
that
need
and
more
take
of
credit for it and
We
make
need
it a
more of that.
conservative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's
exactly.
paint it blue.
Yes.
That's what we should do. But yeah, if Trudeau does something right and I'm a conservative, why am I not saying he did that right? Why am I not supporting the prime minister just because he's a Trudeau liberal? If I don't agree with that,
Yes.
like that's what makes the country better. And then challenge him where he's wrong.
Yeah.
But then also challenge, like there's a lot that I don't agree with the conservatives. And
You're sounding very nuanced. I'm feeling uncomfortable with all this.
no, but
it's
a lot of people just say, oh yeah, that's good because it's got the conservative stamp on it or the liberal stamp or whatever they align with, right? And that's false. Because then what happens is there's one person, the premier, the prime minister, who sets the tone, and you believe what he says. Well, then why do we have MPs, MLAs, and councillors? Let's just dissolve the parliament and have him be a dictator.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality. If you can't speak out against him, we have some MLAs that do that on the lower level, right? And what happens? They get kicked out of caucus. And,
we see it provincially and federally these last few years.
Nice thing about council is Mayor Yarjo can't kick me out. So I'm there to stay. Yeah.
All right, so let's then wrap up with a little bit of chat now about kind of the education side of things. And I know even just in the last, it feels like 3 or 4 years, the whole conversation around education and kids and parental involvement has changed dramatically. So first of all, how long have you been teaching, and what have you noticed as trends or in your experience as a teacher over that time frame? What's changed and what stayed the same?
Right. So I've been teaching for, I think, 14 years. I just wrote a cover letter. So I think 14, 15 years. And I think the thing that's changed is, number one, parental involvement, I think. But that's probably from my move to a school. So I was at a school that was, Christian school. It used to be a private school, it's public school now, but still had that old kind of parent body still. A lot of parents were a little bit higher income level and a lot of parent council involvement and things like that. We had a society that I was on to and our own fundraiser, kind of the old style from the private school years brought through. And then now I'm in the, North Cottage and a lot of more vulnerable kids. And so the parental involvement has changed. But also on a government level or societal level, parental rights is a big thing that's changed, right? And you see that in education, like more and more just kids being able to do their own thing without parents' permission and things like that. So I think it seems like it's been creeping. And so it's happened over the 14 years. But I think if you started at that stage and then saw where I am now, you'd be like, what's happened, right?
Yeah.
So that's been a big thing. The curriculum probably hasn't changed much. You see a lot of criticism over the curriculum.
Yeah.
We went into the discovery learning thing and then phased it out slowly. Problem is with curriculum, and I always say this in education, is that a government will pass a curriculum,
Yep.
And then sooner or later they will leave, unless it's Alberta and it's the Conservatives for so long. But sooner or later that government will leave, but that curriculum won't change. And so then you're teaching kids who are now going to be the next generation. So if you have a conservative, it's not a conservative curriculum or a liberal curriculum, but it does have a slant.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And so
it's
it's gonna get passed, you're gonna teach kids, and those kids are gonna grow up to the next generation. So you're always gonna be behind naturally, right?
Yeah.
When big political shifts come, you're still gonna be behind in the curriculum. People don't understand what we teach. I think that's the biggest flaw is they I know one great thing was someone pulled, and I'm pro oil, I'll say that for sure. But someone did pull something about global warming from a curriculum, and they threw it online. And I usually keep my mouth shut, but they threw it online. And they said, this is the stupidest thing. Like, our teachers are liberalizing kids. And, it says here about, thinking about global warming and thinking about the effects of oil. We know oil causes pollution. We know that. Yeah. So I actually pulled that out of a textbook, and that textbook was passed during a conservative curriculum change. So it's like, things aren't that different, right? Don't slant curriculum. Don't necessarily, it's not that we teach whatever we want. I don't go to school every day and be like, I'm just going to pull this out of my head and just start going with it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the big change, is there's an animosity towards what teachers do, I think.
Yeah. So a lot of conversation around education, and especially in Alberta, has been over the K to 6 curriculum drafting, which started under the NDP.
Yeah.
So you're talking about how there's how the ruling, whoever gets to draft the curriculum,
Right.
It's almost impossible not to put your kind of your spin on it, or your bias on
That's
it.
what we
It's
do,
a slant.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just natural.
Yep.
And then put on top of that any further intentional twisting,
Right.
then you can see you can see why curriculum can be such a contentious issue,
Right.
because it has such an enduring
Right.
life when it comes to its implication and use in schools. I'm reading through some of these articles as a teacher point of view. How important is the provincial set curriculum? Like, how closely do you follow it? Do you have a checklist you go through? So how does that work out in the real world there?
When you become better at teaching in terms of the art and science of teaching, you get to know the curriculum really well. So like grade 9 math, I've taught it forever, so I know it really well. So there's things you need to learn. You need to nail those things for grade 10. If you don't, the next teacher is going to call you on it, right? So in the maths, very closely. In the social, you have topics and threads to delve into, but a lot of suggestions in the curriculum.
Okay.
So examine the French heritage and how Francophone Alberta is different from Anglophone Alberta. And so you then decide as a teacher how to bring that in. You can talk about Francophone schools. You can talk about, some of the stuff that happened with Francophone, Métis wars and things like that. Kind of influence it. So you have some ideas suggested.
Breadth, yes.
Yeah, kind of that IEEG thing. Sometimes they tell you exactly what to do.
Okay, yeah.
Specifically. And then sometimes there's a little bit of a leeway, and you all have your different slant on how to get that across to kids, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there's some wiggle room, but definitely not as much wiggle room as people think, right? If you had me teaching social 10,
yes,
and you had an extreme person on the other side of the political spectrum teaching social 10, if you're doing your job the way you're hired to do your job, there shouldn't be a lot of difference there.
Okay, so that's
if there is, I think you're a bad teacher, because there is a job to do, and you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, all these curriculums, the NDP slant, the conservative slant, they all really do talk about the same stuff.
Similar things,
Global warming is not an NDP curriculum thing.
Yeah.
It's back in the day, right? They talked about it.
It seems most of the argument is over whether or not something is emphasized or not.
Right. And so that's the slant where you could get off, go down a rabbit hole and maybe slant something to the detriment of something else, right?
Yep.
And I think there's people that do that. One of the famous cases in Alberta was with Keekstra, and back in the day with the Holocaust, and he was a Holocaust denier, and somehow managed to work that into the class, and there's examples of that. So those kinds of things do happen. But you see all this stuff about teachers doing this to kids or that to kids and slanting this and that. That's not the way it is. So
you're saying that the curriculum is set up so that there are certain things that you just have to, that you teach
Yeah.
in a certain way, and usually math, I'm guessing, is probably
Right.
very kind of checklist kind of based. Whereas other things such as sociology or social studies,
Right.
you'd be presented with kind of here's the idea that you need to get across, but it lets the teacher do that in their own way, his or her own way.
So like I teach globalism in social 10-2.
Yep.
And so with globalism right now, I could very much speak to how alliances tie us up with globalism. Of course, I would tie into the Ukraine thing, right? Look how we just devastated the Russian economy pretty much overnight, right?
Yeah.
So because of globalization, they're tied to us, right? Back in the day of the Tsar would control the economy. We wouldn't even trade with anybody. It was locked down tight. So I would dive into that.
Yeah.
Teacher 5 years ago wouldn't have touched on that because Russia wasn't at war with the Ukraine. So you work things into the context that you're in. You definitely pull from your life. You have to.
Yeah.
You definitely pull from your experience. You definitely pull from what's going on in the world. But the curriculum's still the same. At the end of the day, the kid knows the ins and outs of globalization. And there's enough facts and things in the textbook and ideas that there is a canned do this, do that, do this, do that, and then you have some wiggle room there.
So there's enough. So you have some freedom in how you teach it,
Right.
but you would say there's enough guardrails so that so teachers on opposite ends of the spectrum, if they are following what is in the curriculum, they I guess would you say they could flavor it in their particular way, but it wouldn't be like some sort of ideological indoctrination. Is that
Right.
something like that?
Yeah. So like the curriculum's the curriculum. I'm fairly conservative. My kids aren't coming out as conservative robots out of my classroom at all.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Now, when a government gets in and they change the curriculum drastically and they cut out, like say you were to just erase oil. Oil's a great thing. Like try heating our homes here, right? You erase that and you just demonize it, and then you go only pro stop global warming. And don't look at the fact that we can't do that overnight. It has to be a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Not a conversion just overnight. If you got rid of all that, then if that's all I can teach, then it's going to come out slanted like that, right?
Sure, yeah.
So your socials, your social sciences, those kinds of things. Luckily, I'm a math and science guy mostly. So it's like fractions are fractions, whether you're a liberal or conservative, right?
Yeah.
So a quarter is a quarter, unless you're passing a budget, I guess sometimes.
I was going to say, or depending on the inflation rate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess the numbers do get fudged. That's actually pretty true. So
Yeah, the
numbers aren't always perfect.
yeah, my quarter in my pocket today is not the same quarter that was a year ago. So
It's devastating. Yeah.
I get, and okay, so the curriculum, that's good. You get a lot of these different talking points and people making comments on it. So yeah, it's important to have your eye on the curriculum, because would you say that would be more where kind of the ideological shifts would happen,
Right.
If possible. It would be more in the curriculum than at, say, the teacher level, because because of the guardrails
Yeah.
that the curriculum.
The big ideological shifts would come from curricular changes, right? Yeah.
So another topic that's kind of making news every now and then when it comes to schools is actually the names of schools. Not so much recently, but certainly over the last 2 years or so, we've seen a lot of name changes going on from I think I got an article here from from June of last year. A school in Calgary is changing their name from Bishop Grandin to another school. To another name. There's a Langevin school that's being changed. There's even names with our founding Prime Minister of John A. Macdonald that have been changed. What's your take on that? And then how does that end up playing out in how we understand history altogether?
Right. I think the message when you change history, the message is that history can be changed and it shouldn't be. It can't. It's laid down, and I think we need to learn from it for sure. But I'm not a person. I've always said, like, when I give that opinion that things shouldn't necessarily be changed. There are people with atrocities, so there's kind of a gray area here.
Yeah.
But these people have names on schools because they've done great things for our country, great things for maybe the world. Now, if you dig deep enough, everybody has atrocities. So I wouldn't want to be the person that decides which names get changed. I think I've never walked into a school and looked up at a banner and seen a name in my school of a person who has destroyed my past or my history or challenged my ethnicity, right?
Sure.
I've never had that as a white Christian male. And so to speak to that would be really hard for me. So it's kind of a gray area. I do like the controversy because I think it opens up the conversation.
There's definitely a conversation to be had. I think around it. What I guess one angle on that is it ends up. I think you touched on it. It becomes this kind of. I think C.S. Lewis came up with it. Was this kind of with the term chronological snobbery, where because we're later in the timeline, we can look back with our kind of moral 2020 vision. We are the good people on the timeline because we're the latest, and we've learned. We can go back and judge these people in the past by that standard. So I guess there's that element in which we just think we're better than the people in the past. But then the other element is there's almost this. It's not a conversation that's being had. But it feels to me more like an erasure altogether, and it's like as if it doesn't matter what good the person has done. We can't talk about that. We can't even use his name on anything if he's done anything bad. And even perhaps even and like. I don't want to step in anything too tough. At least not prepared. So there's angles on this that we'll talk about on another podcast once I'm more prepared. But there's especially when kind of talking about this in kind of the educational sense. It does seem to be more of let's just get rid of this name altogether. From history, and it ends up communicating that this person did nothing good. So having a name and erasing it both make a statement, and that I think that's what perhaps is missed on this.
So I'll go with the John A. MacDonald example. So just in general, erasing someone from history. We're judging him from our stance today in the context, the cultural context we have today. Not a great guy, right? But we're judging him from laws on a moral basis that he actually laid the foundation for. So what you and me are talking about, we're talking about something that was plotted out for the last century or over a century. He brought in that English version of law to Canada, right? He brought in the system of the courts that we had. He brought in all that. So we're judging him from the way we grew up morally. But a lot of that is like foundationally put in place by the original governments and the way this country was founded. So we're judging the guy by the standards that down the line he really started to bring in. So it's really a catch-22. We have a great country where we can judge our leaders. He's one of the guys that gave us that, right? We would never judge the king.
But it seems almost hard to be. It's something like it seems difficult to say that now. You can't acknowledge the good that someone has done, because then every time we mention the good someone has done, we have to make sure we caveat that with the laundry list of evil he did.
And I think if you put anybody's name on a school, if you've lived long enough down the line after they're dead, things are going to creep up that they might have not been the best person. That's why it's safe to name schools after the local people, right? Less controversy, but I think down the line. I know down in the States, the Confederacy is a big one. And so Confederate generals and stuff. And there's many Confederate generals that were, for their country. The Confederacy was a country. That's what they believed in. Are those people atrocious? Probably some of them. Who am I to judge which ones get their names taken off and not, right? So I don't know. I don't want to be in a position where I judge someone's value in the past and what it's worth. Those people are foundational. The name was put there for a reason to begin with, and I don't know necessarily if it's a knee-jerk reaction all the time.
And then so you got the Confederacy in the States. Up here, a lot of these names are names that are being removed because they're linked to the residential school system. But it's it does seem like more of a kind of that knee-jerk reaction because this is all in the last couple of years. And it does have a chilling effect on being able to talk about these people as real people.
Right.
We just kind of pigeonhole them as these kind of evildoers in the past
Right.
that we cannot even acknowledge any good that they did.
Right. And you question,
and then,
as a politician or as a person or as a teacher or as a military person with the camera on, can I speak well of John A. Macdonald without repercussions to my career?
Right.
Absolutely,
Right,
I can.
right.
He was one of the founding fathers.
Yeah.
We owe a lot of our freedom to the things those people put in place. Did they do atrocious things? Absolutely. Do I think they're good men? Not necessarily. Am I to judge them? I don't think I'm in that position, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really hard question, because I know that I've had conversations, I've thought of things, I've probably said things that certain people don't agree with, and down the line, would I want anything good that I've done overshadowed? I hope not.
Yeah. So interesting. So are there subjects and people that you feel less comfortable or that you're more careful to talk about now than when you first started? Do you feel like there's more subject matter that you have to be more careful in handling in classroom than you did 15 years ago?
I do like teaching's pretty good. I have a really good, well, we have a great district. Red Deer Public Schools is an awesome district. So our curriculum challenges us to challenge kids, right?
Yeah.
And so we really dig deep into topics, and we allow for everybody to have that conversation. So I do have kids, especially some of my online kids, that have some pretty controversial ideas, and you hatch that out because it's coming from somewhere, and they have a voice. And so where did you learn that? Where did you get that? Where did you come with those biases? Because we all do, right? Even the slant that John A. Macdonald should be on a school or shouldn't be on a school, both of those are biases. Yeah. Because you're avoiding something. And so I like digging deep into those things, and that's how kids learn. Like if you tell them how to think all the time, when I'm gone, it's over, right? Because who are they gonna if they don't have parents, or their parents tell them how to do it and you tell them how to do it, then it's done when you're done. So you have to teach them how to think, not what to think.
Yeah, and I'm more and more concerned that that's not happening, and I think part of that is the fact that some of these name changes are done not out of a deep conversation, but it's just this name offends a certain group, and so we have to get rid of it. There's no nuance beyond that.
The main story I would bring to it that challenged me as a teacher is when I was in teacher school in university for my bachelor degree. I had a social professor, and her last name was Von something, and she was German descent, and she told me a story that when she was in school, they had to do a Remembrance Day ceremony thing, and they had to tell about a parent or a family member, someone that was in the war, and she spoke of her grandfather, I believe, and he was a German war-marked officer. So at that time it was a Nazi government. He fought. If you look on Wikipedia, it always has like the German Empire, the old guys, German Empire, Nazi Reich, and it changes as the country changes, your allegiance changes, or you get out, right? And so he was, by his nature as a soldier, under Adolf Hitler. And he fought for his country, Germany, a Germany that he knew before Adolf Hitler came from Austria and changed it, right? From the empire. And so he knew the empire Germany. He was proud of that. He fought, and her teacher gave her heck for choosing a Nazi. And when you put it that way, you can see, like, why would you choose that? And that's her grandfather, who fought for his country, not for a political ideal. And so that's devastating when we tell people that their history doesn't matter anymore. Their background doesn't matter. Right?
So no, thank you for stopping by. I think we've covered a wide range of topics today. It's been great. From military to political to education. I think we've run the gamut. I appreciate getting the insight on these different life experiences and processes that go on in society that you can read about on the page, but there's always a reality to it that gets played out by the person. And so I appreciate your ability to bring that perspective and that experience to us tonight.
Thank you.
So hopefully our listeners got something out of that as well.
It's been awesome to be here.
So thank you. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully we'll get Michael Rowland back for the next episode. But until then, my name is Brian Constantine, and this has been Penhold Talk Radio.